Good Sunday morning and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be taking a look at a Skellige Rage of the Sea deck that I put together, and I had a lot of fun playing this. I am going to be including 5 games for you guys today. I would have actually included about 8 or 9 games, but I went in between one of the games and went to reply to a YouTube comment, and sure enough I accidentally clicked my own video, and that's running through like half my footage. So that's too bad. But we got some really good games for you guys today, and I honestly would play this deck again. I think this is a pretty competitive deck. I think that there are certain matchups where you just won't do well, and you need to have units to play into, because a lot of the value that we have comes from the rain that we put on their side of the playing field, and that's how we're getting the big points off things like the Messenger of the Sea, right? So we'll get into the deck here. We have Fukusha. You're able to play a Skellige unit from your graveyard with a provision cost of 10 or less and give it doomed, and spawn rain in the opposite row for the duration equal to unused provisions. So there's a couple ways to go about this. You could pull into the Melusine, which is great. If we established big carryover in round 1, then you can pull this out for maybe 20 odd points in round 3. Makes a big difference. You can go into Defender if you're worried, into Tall Punish or something like that for your Messengers of the Sea. You can go into the Real Hand, which is kind of like the big catalyst of all the damage that we're going to be doing, right? This is going to be coming to the playing field and triggering all the effects of rain or storm on the opposite side of the battlefield. So once you have everything lined up perfectly and you're ready to pull the trigger, you bring out Real Hand with something like Fukusha if you need to. And of course, maybe you dive for a Messenger of the Sea. Maybe you pull one of these because they got taken away, and there's going to be a lot of value for this throughout the round that you want to play into. So makes a big difference. What I like about it too is if you use Fukusha to pull out a Messenger of the Sea, obviously the Messenger of the Sea will get procced on turn start, or turn end I guess you could say, and their turn starts, so it's harder for them to remove it a second time. So it works out quite well in that way. And FULMAR is really cool. FULMAR has a deploy effect, spawn and play Tears of Siren, order replace rain on an enemy row with storm for the same duration. So what you're looking to do here is take this rain and put it on their row, right? You want to stack rain pretty aggressively on their row that's, you know, with the most units on it. And we have leader to do so, we have FULMAR to do so. I even teched in an additional Tears of Siren, what we get off the Cultist and what we get off the Melusine. There's lots of ways to put rain. You want to beef up the row with that, and you want to turn it into a storm with the order of this card, and then that's when we'd want to go and trigger the Real Hand afterwards. So that's kind of how the play comes together, and it makes quite a big sense, quite a big swing as well. And Melusine, this is a card that I've used in many different decks. It's pretty versatile. It plays really well into self-wound decks, but it plays phenomenal into rain decks as well. So it has Veil, so they can't lock it. Order spawn rain in the enemy row for 2 turns and damage self by 2. At the end of your turn, damage adjacent units by 1 and gain 1 base power for every unit damaged. If anyways a cultist, refresh Melusine's order. So you don't necessarily have to click the order on this card unless you do have the payoff cards here. Otherwise, you could just let it accrue points and carry over, and just, you know, basically save that for a big points land later on. But I do believe that by clicking it here and there, it's going to not play into Tall Punish too much. So I like to click it here and there because you are getting the points back on their side of the playing field, assuming that they don't have shields or armor and stuff like that. So it does make sense here. Royal Decree is not something I wanted to put because I usually like my Heat Wave up in this area, but the problem is if we miss a couple of our key cards here, we could pretty well lose the game. So we want to be able to pull into these units that really matter, Defender even being one of them. So that's why the Royal Decree is here, and Defender is kind of here to protect the greed, right? Melusine gets very tall, FULMAR has to stick. We have the 2 Messengers of the Sea, potentially a third one off a Megascope. So Defender just seems like something that should be in a deck like this. If you wanted to make a more greedy version of the deck, I would argue that maybe you can go in with like an Ermion in a Heat Wave. Ermion for an Alchemy card, which would get our Sigdriffas right, and then Heat Wave for Tall Punish. But I just couldn't bring myself to it. I think that this is a little bit more consistent in the long run. And then we have our standard discard package with the Coral, the Burna, and the Tursik Skirmishers, and the Morkvarg, right? So you're able to basically discard these cards, have a bit more deck consistency, get these cards summoned to the playing field when we discard them, and then get the damage off the coral for everyone we discard. Now, I'm thinking about taking out my Heimei Skald. For a deck like this, I really wanted to pull into my cards because all the pieces have to come together for it to see a lot of value. Now, the issue that I'm having with the additional discard sometimes is it's pulling something that we don't want to discard. I find more often than not you're getting what you need, assuming you're getting the Burn of Bran and the Coral. It's just if you drew those and then you also draw the Skald, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. But using Skald to pull into them is not so bad. Okay? And Bride of the Sea is awesome. So play an alchemy card from your graveyard with a provision of cost of 4 or less, increase the rain. Will increase the cost by the total duration of rain or storm on your opponent's side. So with this card here, normally you're going to be pulling into a Sigdriva's Right. Okay, so we know that it gives us 4 or less by default, so we have to have at least 4 rain on their side to make it an 8 for Sigdriva's Right. So take that in mind when you play the Bride of the Sea, because by default we have the Tears of Siren, and that's just there to give it something to pull into if we need it. However, I don't think that you want to spend it on something like Tears of Siren when you have a Sigdriva's Right. And Delirium is certainly an option as well. This is in there for more of like a Saskia attack, but you know, more than often, like I said, unless it's that certain matchup that I just described with the Saskia, you probably want to pull into like Sigdriva's Right, because you have to bring back a few different cards, right? You have to bring back your Melusine, you probably want to bring back your Defender, you want to bring back the Riohan, so there's like a lot of things that are cycling in this deck. So just make sure you have the rain on the board, which works out perfectly by your leader. So if you're able to save your leader for round 3, you shouldn't have a problem using this card. It should never brick. And Cultist is pretty cool because it spawns rain, but it also acts as an engine boosting adjacent units by 1 if there's storm on their side. So it plays for a lot of points. If you just have rain on their side, it's still boosting the unit to the right by 1. So it's really good in that way. The Gutting Slash makes a lot of sense here because it requires Bloodthirst 2 to get the additional 2 points of damage. So because we're splitting up our points pretty wide, we're getting tons of rain damage, you're going to be getting really good value off the Gutting Slashes. So even though they're not an alchemy card, they just fit within this sort of deck and archetype, which is really nice. And then the half roos are just really good value because these could give us rain in a time that we're, you know, really needing rain, right? So we have the effect of being able to damage itself by 4 and spawn rain, and we can add to our whole combo, which is really nice. But if we just play them for the points that they're worth, they still have really good value, right? First one plays for 6, the second one plays for 8, so they average out around 7 for 4 when we play them from hand in the same round. So that's pretty much it for today. We'll get into the games, and if you guys enjoy the content that you see today, don't forget to drop a sub on the channel because I post every single day around 8 AM Eastern Daylight Time. I'm starting to think about maybe posting a little bit earlier, but I'll let you guys know if I change my mind with that. Also, I am going to be getting back into streaming on Twitch, so if you guys are looking to see live streams in the coming months, make sure you go to the Twitch page and drop a follow there so you'll know when I go live. But for now, let's get into the games. And for the first game, we have Nilfgaard Tactical Decision. This one's going to be a hyper thin list that we're playing against. So I like being able to establish some carryover with Melusine in hand round 1, but we don't have a lot in the way of discards here. I'm not really big on playing the Messenger of the Sea early. I try to reserve those for later on. I think we can win round 1 with the discard package and Melusine, so I normally tuck it away. FULMAR was a consideration to put away here as well, just so we have more of a playable hand in round 1 and we can go really deep with the round 1 play. And I think that as we draw into our discard cards, we'll have room to pull out FULMAR later, or at least we hope so, right? And I'm going to respect the fact that they might have some kind of removal for the Melusine, so I'm going ahead and playing the Defender here, and we can start engineering that quickly. Now, Melusine can go on range roll beside the Defender, ping off the armor for a turn or 2, and then we can look at getting our discards out there afterwards. Maybe play something to the right of Melusine so that we're getting the extra value off of Melusine. and generally you want to play Coral before you play the Scald, just so that we're getting the extra 2 damage on their side of the playing field from the Scald. Let's take a second and look at what they're doing here. This was actually pretty interesting, not gonna lie. I had no idea what I was playing into. It was my first time seeing someone running Land of a Thousand Fables in a tactical decision deck, so I wasn't sure what the strat was, so that might affect how I play the round a little bit. And what I mean by that is potentially we just look for a temple pass and just see what they do, right? Because we don't know, and being able to kind of sit back, get some value off the Melusine, and just watch their play unfold will kind of give me some indication how to play later rounds in the game. Yeah, Half-Root can just be played here. We can just get bonded on those two and no harm done. The alternative is if we get a pass on them, like now for example, there's consideration to just play down to 4 and just dry pass round 2, because I like doing that in situations where I don't know what I'm playing into. I force the long round because I feel pretty comfortable with this deck in the long round, especially with the last say. So I'm opting to do that here, and I don't think we're going to be penalized for it at all. And because we didn't draw a lot of what we needed before, we have more time to pull into these really good cards. So if you're wondering why I played down to 4, that's pretty much it. And you see what I mean here with the Melusine being 18 points. Like, we got a lot more value from that, and I felt like they were trying to pass to prevent that from happening. So Berna, Fulmar, the Cultist. And see, we're not missing a whole lot at this point, right? So now we can get some information here. Didn't really get a lot of information. I guess we'll have to find out in round 3. And pulling into both Messengers of the Sea is really good. We want Fukusha, but we have access to Fukusha with the Royal Decree. So we're not depending on just our discards to get Fukusha. If we had the more greedy version I was talking about earlier in the deck guide presentation, then we'd have to just rely on those discards, and it gets a little bit tricky there. So one thing I did find a little bit awkward with this deck was some of the openers. Like, we do have cards that we can play, but I definitely think I prefer playing like on a red coin with this deck. In a time like this, we'd probably go for something like the Cultist, right?
Across wave crests, lead us through storms.
And we knew they had Albas. Generally, when someone has an Alba, they have 2 Albas, which is fine. The fact that that gets a lock means that maybe one of these messengers doesn't get a lock. So that was like a really good bait of the lock from us, and I don't think we really suffer from it too much here.
You shall never find peace.
Cut my paws off, I'll bite you to death.
So I'm looking at this, and what I probably would have done if I was to redo this play would put the defender to the left of the
Why aren't you listening? Listen to me sing, damn it!
actually, it wouldn't even have mattered, would it? No, because Melusine would spawn to the right. I think we're okay here. But there was an argument to maybe play Fukusha on the back row to get the 1 extra point, opposed to just hitting the armor there.
Not all battles need end in bloodshed.
Yeah, I probably would have done that. Fukusha on back row with defender next time, because we don't run into problems here, and I didn't think we were going to, but for whatever reason, when you're playing against Nilfgaard, maybe you just want to make sure your row, you know, has as much space as possible. So we would definitely do that, so that when our discards come up, they're going onto the melee row, and we don't have a risk of over swarming the front row. But we want to engine out Melusine here as soon as possible. It's going to help contribute to Rain, but it's also really good feeding off the defender here, because the defender is going to be gaining armor, so it makes a big difference. And sure enough, we can get one of these online here. And then obviously you want to follow up with the second one. And there is consideration to try and burn it into maybe a Megascope and get the third one online, but I don't think we'll need to use that here. I opted to put one instead of the Melusine just hitting the defender, because I felt like, you know, maybe it's safer for us overall. If they can get through the defender for whatever reason, then it's a little bit scary, so we kind of want to see some armor stack on that. And this is looking pretty promising, guys. FULMAR has to come down here.
Honor to be sacrificed to the goddess.
And then next turn, we're going to have to hit with the real hand, just because the rain will be counting down, and we don't want to wait too long with that. We can trigger all the damage, and that should just win the game, right?
Quite the menial task. I can eat me ghoulie. Looky here.
They have double Wanderers. That's kind of cool. We'll stack even more rain here. Do even more damage here.
Lady of the seas, daughter of the heavens,
And just watch the fireworks. Or the rain works, right? There, we're playing around Scorch. Now, Defender served his purpose here, and so did the Melusine Cultist. If it wasn't for those two cards, this wouldn't be possible, right? Eating the Lock and eating the Vilgefortz, we're doing really well with this here. We're just going to keep hammering them with damage and just see what we can get rid of. That's perfect. Now they won't get the extra points off the Snowdrop every turn. I think it's safe to say at this point of the game we pretty much are good. But we have to be careful, because, like,
Cross the wrong sorceress.
if there's something we're missing, we're in really big trouble. But because it's hyper thin, I'm just expecting the usual.
So be it.
And sure enough, we'll just discard that Megascope. It's a little bit too late for the Megascope here. The Tears doesn't really do a whole lot either. It's just going to play for a couple points, right?
We shall see what the future holds.
And so, yeah, they conceded. I'm just playing this for you guys just to show you how the deck functions, not to BM. But that's pretty much what we came up with.
Your powers of deduction.
And moving on to the second game of the day, we have Monsters with Bloodscent. And this should be a pretty interesting matchup because they're going to have bleeding on all of our units, and we're going to be just putting rain all over the board on their side, so it should be pretty cool. We could probably tuck back Sigdrifa's right in round 1, and I'm thinking about maybe tucking back Fukusha because there's a good probability that we'll pull back into it, but I don't know if I really want to see Megascope either in round 1. So that should just be fine here. Nine's kind of an awkward power to remove, but I think we just have to start playing our discards.
That might even be amusing.
Crack and eat me girly. Looky here.
Now, with the whole discard round that we have, it's going to be very tricky for us to win the round because we're going to be spreading our points pretty wide, and they're going to have a lot of targets that they can give bleeding to. So, I don't know if I'm necessarily going for round win, but we're definitely going for looking to see if we can get some commitments from them. And sure enough, the non-devotion version comes out. I think that it might actually be stronger when comparing the two because the extra flatters make a huge difference. I'm just opting to go for the Melusine here. Trying to get some carryover for later. I don't think at this point that they have a heat wave, but because it's non-devotion, if we're going to see one, it's going to be probably in this, obviously, right?
We shall do it my way.
And I think we just go ahead and take Burna where we can here. There's a consideration to dump back the Heimei Scald or the Melusine Cultist, but I think that the Scald's worth a little bit less, right? The fact that we cycled out all of our discards pretty well, like I'm pretty content with that anyway, so we can just go ahead and dump the Scald and get some rain there. Again, not to go too tall on the Melusine. And sure enough, we actually do see Heatwave, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. We still have a few more bronzes that we can trade in this round, so I'm thinking about playing into those while we still have the time for it.
Great is her hunger, and great is her fire.
Sure enough, here, go for the Cultist, get the extra boost on the Morkvarg before the rain expires, and then we can look at just putting more rain and getting that ongoing value from it. Depending on what they play over the next turn or two, we're probably looking for a pass. Don't really want to play Messenger of the Sea. Hafru is not bonded, but I could still play it, I guess. The other Melusine Cultist is playable in this case, I'm sure. I don't even mind playing Delirium, to be fair.
Another little thunderbolt.
And Maxi tells me that they're pretty comfortable, so we could just go ahead and maybe put a little bit more pressure on here.
The sea demands a price, and you shall pay it.
While we can, I think that's fair. If they played something a bit more aggressive, I probably would have went in with something maybe not like the Messenger of the Sea and just tried to play one more inexpensive card. But because they played a little soft, we want to just push them a little bit further into the round here. And it would be nice to take round, obviously, so we could try and answer the Regis at the end, but there's really not a lot we can do for that in this deck because we don't have like a Heat Wave or Tall Punish. Leading by 4, we get a couple of points back. So we can still play 1.
Accept this offering that we might make the coast safe.
And this is going to probably have to be my pass here because when they get bleeding with those 2 Necrorats, the Flutters are going to get massive, and I don't think we can come back from that, especially because we already have bleeding on a couple of units of ours. But we did see one of the leader charges, which is really good for round 1. Yeah, sure enough, there's no way we have to get out of the round here for sure. Don't tell me I did it. No. This is daring. Okay. I guess that kind of makes sense. If we snipe them both... Alright, I'm going to stand by that for sure. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. We're really pushing it for everything it's worth here, though. And surely everything has bleeding on it. We can just go for the pass. There we go. Could have been taking a turn sooner, but I think that's fine here still. And with vampires, I don't anticipate that they really bleed us too much. So I kind of want to collect like a round 3 hand more or less. Maybe keep something like the Half-Roof for a pass or the Messenger. It'd be a shame to put the Messenger on a pass, but we could still take one back with one of our Secret of His Rights. And we get the pass we're looking for. That's pretty good. So moving on to round 3, honestly, they probably have a pretty good round 3. And I think we have a pretty good round 3. So at this point, I'm not sure. I've never faced this matchup, so... have the Defender, that's great. I think Gutting Slash goes back there. Bonded on the Half-Row is really good. That's like the hand, I think, yeah? Because we can bring back Messengers and we can bring back real hands, so we're doing alright for that too. And we'll get more rain because the Messengers are less expensive. Don't have to worry about Molosine because of the heat wave earlier. And that's what I was afraid of. That's actually a really big play, so... Since our defender's up, we can go ahead and get out the messenger here. We put Fukusha on the range row to get the rain on them, and then we just put her behind the defender. That's fine. I know we give them one extra target for bleeding, but we have to play that way in order to get the most value here, so... And we can essentially take the Sigdrifa's right next, I believe, onto the second messenger, and that should just be fine. It's going to get a lot of value, but for what it's worth, pretty much everything that it spawns could be eliminated, so I don't mind too much when we see something like that.
This message is for FULMAR. His eyes only.
And we don't need to go crazy with the rain. They'll start working on their own, and then we can start to stack it up shortly. And it would have been so cool if they had Blood Moon on the back row as well. So we want to go ahead and get the FULMAR down soon. And it's starting to look like we're gonna have to play that on the melee row, right? Because there's gonna be the most units there. Doesn't really matter where we put it, it just kind of looks cool that way. And then we're going to basically wipe this front row, it's going to be nuts. So I'm thinking about putting more on the back row in the meantime, because we don't want to overkill the front row too much. It's already doing enough. And they didn't let us finish, man. Moving on to the third game of the day, we have Nilfgaard, Enslave, and I believe this one's Enslave 6. Can double check here in a second. It's going to be very difficult because I don't necessarily like the way our deck plays into this matchup, because we have a lot of engines we want to keep going and they have a lot of control, and then cards that are very tall like the Messengers of the Sea, Melusine, etc. are going to be very difficult to keep here because they might have, you know, tall or multiple tall punishes, right? So it's nice that we have both of our discards in hand, but we can't play them first, so we just have to play something and kind of hope for the best here. I want to go ahead with the defender so we have more chance of keeping the Melusine going. I don't think that they're going to have a Purify, so I'm just banking on maybe them having to use a removal on the defender, and then Melusine might stick. And sure enough, we see the heat wave come down. I'm actually pretty happy with that. And I don't want to play Melusine on an empty board. I'm thinking about actually greeting it a little bit here. Instead of taking a discard, just, well, we'll take that discard, but instead of taking it with Coral, we'll just go ahead and do that so we can put the Melusine down here and start getting value on it.
Onward, sons of Nilfgaard!
So this must be Enslave 5, I'm pretty sure,
I can do it.
because the heat wave was in the deck. Argument to just dump one of those, that's fine. I don't really want to use Melusine here just because There's only one unit on their row. I'm hoping to play something to the side of it.
No one can hide from me.
That would have been nice for the Burna. And they're playing around the rain quite well here. So we still want to feed into Melusine, so I'm going to play around it here. And we still have a couple cards that we can throw away that aren't very valuable here. The Halfra would be one of them, perhaps. And the Skull would be another. We can also consider even going as far as putting the Messenger. But I think that's fine. Yeah, it's Enslave 5. Give me a second. I'm just going to let my pet out. And so sure enough, they answer the Melusine, which is horrible. But it puts them in a situation where they have to go and use Leader. So I actually don't mind this at all. Amnesty and Non-Devotions, not great, but at least they have the couple tall punishes, right? And so they're going to play that for a lot of carryover. They basically let us have the whole round of building that up just to take it away from us. This cat keeps going to the door, and every time I go to get up and let her out, she keeps running away from the door and hiding under furniture, so we're stuck kind of in between here. I'm trying to do the video. So with Melusine at that size, I don't see why they wouldn't bleed in this case.
The sea demands a price, and you shall pay it.
And to be fair, I'm actually quite confident that they don't have any sort of punish remaining, just because, think about it, 2 tall ones in round 1, how much can you really fit, especially in Enslave 5, right? Alright, let's try and let her out again. 1 sec.
In the end, the sea will swallow all.
Alright, 3rd time's the charm. We got it.
You have our undivided.
I wouldn't say this bleed's going super well for them. But I guess they're very concerned about a long round 3, so we're in a pretty good spot here. All we have to do is defend card. And I'm just looking with Rain. Delirium should be enough here to take us ahead. There's also consideration to go into the Coral here and get the Morkvarg to really tempo ahead.
That might even be amusing.
Just one more.
And I played the Messengers like in this round because I felt like if it's going to be a shorter round 3, we don't really want to have them as carryover. I don't think real hand's as important in this matchup. But if that's what we have to take, we'll take it, even just for points, which is kind of the nice part about it. It's still an 8-point slam, even if you don't have a bunch of rain.
So be it.
And we're comfortably defending card. I wouldn't even mind just going in with a gutting slash here or something. So FULMAR, again, another one of those cards that won't really be worth a lot in round 3, so we want to get the maximum potential for it here. Just trying to decide if I want to make it Storm. I don't think we need to go ahead and do... well, we'll make it Storm, but clicking the half row as well, I don't think we need to do that. Delirium on front row just because we have Storm on back row, and that'll just wipe out the board. Well, almost. You know, it'll get most of the stuff out of the way here. Melusine will pretty much be the only card standing at the end of the turn. So, that was pretty good. We got a lot of commitments from them, and I don't think that we really put out a whole lot here. Obviously, pulling into the Megascope at the end is not ideal, but it's not horrible either. We do have the card advantage. The only thing we're lacking in the first place, proactivity, so we have to take like a Tears of Siren or something just for the 2 points, and that's kind of what I'm looking at, because I don't think I want to go and play Fukusha yet. I think Fukusha is one of those things that we want to save for the end, just in case. And I go ahead and I take that out just because I feel like maybe they might be able to boost it or something like that. Surely they could have went and boosted it, so wouldn't have been able to next turn, would have had a shield on it. Just kind of looking to see where we're going to find our points here. I think Bride of the Sea into a Tears is probably the safer play of the two. And there's actually an argument there to put the Tears on the other row. Just because they do have the 1 liter charge left, so we do give them the point side by side. But the fact that they have all these tactics kind of makes it more difficult for them too. Nice little 2-point Megascope. At this point though, like, I think we're doing pretty well. Make who that and just get their own Siren, which is not a whole lot. We can play around that, of course, because we have the Fukusha. We just played on front row. And that'll just do it for the game. Bring out the 8 points. Not really the way you're supposed to play the card, but it's certainly fine here because it's enough points to win the game. Now, showed you guys a few good games. So we'll show you guys a game that's not ideal. This matchup is not a lot of fun. And our whole deck basically... So it revolves around playing into their cards, right? Being able to interact with them and put rating on their row and then, you know, obviously damage all their stuff. But if we're playing into like a low unit deck, then that whole strategy goes down the drain. So a lot of cards that we have that are fairly expensive, they get really big diminishing returns, and it gets a little bit more difficult here, so... We have one chance. We have one chance. And we hit the wrong card 6 times. If we were to get even a couple on Saskia, Rain would have been able to take that out, right? And that's the problem with like the Delirium 2, is leaving it to lottery when we have obviously the 2 cards that are on the row. Again, we have a chance to snipe her here. And we don't.
Just one more circle.
So that's pretty much it, right? Because of this, we don't really have the same sort of push in round 1 that we otherwise would. Because it'll take about 4 turns for us to remove that with Rain, assuming we hit it every single turn. And then, which is unlikely, but then it's also going to be pulling out other cards, so it's going to be replenishing the points we're taking away anyways, and the damage would have already been done by the time we remove it, so that's why it's a little bit difficult here. Put down like a Melusine cultist, or maybe one of the half-roos or something on range row, I'm sure. Or even just take the Gutting Slash and see maybe if we can get a pass out of them.
Hear my prayer! Fill me with strength!
First, you must learn to fly.
And so that's going to be too much to keep up with. We have to pass here, otherwise we get passed on. They have another card that comes out next turn. It would be impossible. Especially when it's a Cat Witcher, yeah. You know what I mean? You got 2 cards moving around, 2 cards boosting every time they move. Then the passive points they're getting from damage and boost on the Matron and the Cat Witcher, it's pretty nuts. And so you kind of see the system here. We're looking to get our discard cards. I don't think that they go ahead and bleed too thoroughly in round 2 because they don't want to lose the card advantage. So I'm pretty sure we probably get the pass from them on 7, but I could be wrong. You never know, right? But this is starting to look more like traps. They got bombs, they got Milva, they have pyrotechs, like that sort of thing. When I start to see a lot of damage come out early, then I'm thinking it's more of the traps. When it's strictly engines, then it's probably more that direction. We haven't seen any spell cards played yet, so that's the other really popular version of it. And sure enough, we get the pass here. So we definitely want Burna for the discards. That's like a necessity here. So that's kind of what I'm fishing for. We might have to actually pull into it with the Royal Decree. I don't think we're going to get everything we want. I don't think Bride of the Sea is possible here. Maybe with the Burna, right? But that would be like our last chance.
Who's next? Any of you's got the courage?
And we're lucky that we got around a Serpent Trap and all that. I want to put Melusine out here as quick as possible to get some value from it. Because if we end up getting this card killed from a Serpent Trap or something like that, we can always bring it back later, which is really nice. A lot of the points go into just the carryover of this card, so we have a second chance at it. And I have no idea what they're going to play here. You just take the safe bet. I kind of want to split up the rows a little bit. And Bride of the Sea, nice. That's perfect. So I don't mind that too well. We played pretty well into that trap. What I'm actually really worried about though is playing Fuchsia and playing Fulmar, because those two cards are going to be really bad against Pitfalls. And we want to put them out as quick as possible, but in a way that makes sense, right?
Oh, how wonderful!
So that's probably the Serpent, right? Serpent or Crushing Trap? Either or.
In the end, the sea will swallow it all.
And we have an opportunity here to take either a half-brew or one of the messengers. I think we try and take a messenger if we have the ability to do so. They get Milver from hand. That's actually pretty nice to see here. And let's go ahead and take that. I think if I would to do this matchup again, I would probably play Megascope when there's a face down trap. Just because that's one more turn where they could have played maybe a Pitfall or something like that. And playing a Megascope into a Pitfall would be perfect. Now we pretty much just have expensive cards. And Bride of the Sea would be like negative points. Fulmar's pretty much negative points. Fukusha as well. I don't really want to play Sigdriffas right here, but we could.
Sacrifices must be made on both sides. A beautiful
Take that for the bonded. So we know that that's probably their Serpent Trap, right? It's that or a second Crushing. Yeah. It sucks because if we don't play our cards, we lose. If we play our cards, they're playing against us. Like, it's not a very fun matchup at all. The rain here doesn't matter. Real hand would just win the game, too. Like, that's the thing about it. If we would have gotten a bit luckier on, like, the 5 chances that we had in round 1 to take out the Saskia in the back row, we would have been able to be more competitive in round 1, giving us the potential of having last say in round 3. When they flip over these traps, we'd be able to actually just clear the entire row. So that's kind of where the frustration lies, right?
The goddess protect you from all evil.
Feed us with strength, and we feed you.
Now I take Fulmar here, kind of hoping for an earlier flip. It's a little bit optimistic, but I feel like it's the only choice that we have. I thought we were actually going to see the flip here, to be fair. But it's another trap. You see what I mean? All those threes would have been dead eyes, right? Like the traps would have been dead eyes. We would have had this come out.
And grant them your strength in return. What do you need?
I think we just take Melusine then instead here. Even if we just took Melusine here and these were flipped, yeah. It's just crazy how they can do 30 points in one turn.
I'll do so sword in hand.
But that's fine. Moving on to the last game of the day, we have Nilfgaard double cross, and surely we gotta be careful about the way we play here. Obviously worried about getting the Melusine taken again. So we see a couple discards. We have a couple good control cards in hand. I don't mind dumping Bride of the Sea here. I didn't really want FULMAR. Kind of wanted maybe a bronze card.
Accept this offering that we might make the coast safely.
I forgive you. This time.
I don't love playing the Melusine cultist on an empty board just because they can play around it a little bit, right? We don't get the second ability of it if they play on the wrong row, but sometimes you just gotta play something like that. I think it's still fine regardless. If they take like a Thin, then the Thins might go in the range row.
You got a bad case of Rover's back.
I can do a great deal more for you.
Crack and eat me girly. Looky here.
Kind of respecting Tall Punish a little bit. Let's put some points on their side instead. And we just pulled Defender. I was just going to play it as well, but we didn't get a chance to do it. That's unfortunate, but we can still go ahead and maybe... burn a discard overkills the row. That's the only thing. Gutting Slash is not bad, because Gutting Slash means empty board. I was just trying to see how many points the Melusine was worth at that point. So I think we still do take Burn a Brain just for the points. Morkvarg, maybe the Tears, or a Gutting Slash is fine. Take another discard. It's probably going to be the Tears in this case. And I want to try and pass on this, so I'm just throwing the Rain down even though it's one card for that reason. And I'm really hoping that they play here. Nice.
Suffering ennobles, friend.
So I think we have them trapped. So I'm just going to hard pass on that every single day. And I don't think there's a way they can do it in one card. Xavier's not really bad here. Okay, so we don't get the real hand, but we still get like a 2-card advantage going into the next round. Having to see Joachim's pretty big. The Melusine carryover they took away is coming out right now. That's pretty good as well. So I don't think we care too much. So either they try and really push us in round 2 in order to try to make up for the mistake to get the card back, or we go into round 3 with another card. Pretty confident with what we have here. If they're playing illusionists, we didn't really set up great ones for them. The cultist is not a, well, that's a pretty good one, but the half-roos would have been pretty bad as well. I think we do put that down so we can get the bonded on the other 2 next round. And sure enough, they go for the pass, we get the card advantage. I think that could be enough to win the game. Obviously, their leader could be really good as well. So we sort of want to try and get out these top heavy cards before we have 3 or 4 left in hand, so maybe their pickings aren't as good. We definitely don't want them to get one of the cards like FULMAR or Fukusha or anything like that, so... Sigdrifa's Right is nice. We have a pretty good chance of pulling that if we're to go and get like maybe a Burna from Grave. I'm starting to think that might be the hand here. Even if we pull instead of Scald, we have an extra choice. I'm just hoping that there's no way for them to get back the Melusine, because that would be pretty bad for us as well if they somehow rolled like a Sigdrifa's Right. There goes the Scald play, but at least it gives us a pretty good chance of pulling into our Sigdrifa's Right.
In the end, the sea.
And so we see Yen's Invocation, we see Vilgefortz. There's no way they're running a Heat Wave as well, is there, right? So these messengers should just stick. I don't mind going for a defender here, either. I don't mind going for Burna here. I think Burna makes more sense first.
Nothing like some overseas plundering and sprinkling.
The problem is I don't want to stack the melee row too much. With cards, because we have our discards and potential sirens that are going to go on the row, I might actually put the defender on the range row to protect the Fukusha, to be fair, so they can't give it spying and all that. Probably FULMAR here. One thing I should have done was respect the treason. If you're playing into this matchup, you probably put the FULMAR between the twos on the end or something like that. Just if we're, you know, nitpicking.
Everyone has their secrets. Everyone.
Fortunately, it doesn't really make a difference here. And I want to see if we can snipe out that messenger, maybe one of their assimilate engines. We'll flip that while we still can. And so if we're going to... Well, it's tough. We might even just take the delirium if we can't get the rain. I don't think that's a bad idea either. We take delirium potentially, then you can go for like the defender with the Sigriff's right, and they get it. That's great. I was talking about how, yeah, Melusine would have been bad for us. It's a much closer game than it looks, right? With that play coming out, I'm just deciding that I want to kind of respect a Terra Nova play, because that could be a thing. I think they should have played the Blightmaker on the range row. And honestly, at this point, even if they had a removal for one of the messengers, we should just be fine, right? Let's say they go and they somehow took out the 32, we still win the game, so that's kind of what I was thinking.